Yes, thank you. Thank you, Professor Tolling, and thank you to all of you participants. Just a short introduction to this fifth Resilience Catalyst talk. And I am Petra Malizan from the UNESCO Chair on Intersectoral Safety for Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience at the University of Udine. And together with our chairholder, Professor Stefano Grimat, we warmly welcome you to this fifth webinar of the Resilience Catalyst series. This initiative is born under the umbrella of UNESCO, and it's part of the Resilience Program supported by the Central European Initiative. And our purpose is to begin to explore the role of UNESCO chairs focused on disaster risk reduction and resilience in order to consider the complex interplay between the UNESCO pillars, considering education, science, and culture, with the goal of understanding how to transform governance for building resilience to disasters. So we had an initial collegial meeting in last year, where each chair presented their work very briefly, and now we decided to go further, presenting specific outcomes by each chair with the specific talks. So far, we had the talk of the UNESCO Chair on Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience Engineering at the University College of London, led by Professor Dayala, the UNESCO Chair on Water, Energy and Disaster Management for Sustainable Development, Wendy, at the Kyoto University, led by Professor Tachikawa, the UNESCO Chair on Water-Related Disaster Risk Reduction at the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia, led by Professor Mikoš, and 1 week ago, the UNESCO Chair in Informatics and Multi-Hazard Risk Reduction at the Loughborough University in the United Kingdom, led by Professor Q.I. Liang. So all this recording or the recording of these sessions are available in our Resilience Catalyst webpage that is provided in the chat. And building on this momentum, we are very honored to welcome you, Professor Tolling, and your esteemed colleagues from the UNESCO Chair on Urban Resilience at the University of Southern Denmark. We extend our sincere gratitude to you for organizing this very important session. And without further delay, Professor Tolling, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you and also participate to this very important effort in bringing us together. And I thank very much the UNESCO Chair at the University of Udine, and thank you at Professor Mallison and for the kind words. I will share now my screen and a second that I try to put it in full mode. I think you can see it now in full screen mode.
Yes.
Yes, good. So the presentation today for this hour is divided in 3 parts. The first is an introduction about the UNESCO Chair on Urban Resilience at the University of Southern Denmark that I coordinate. The second part is a more deep dive into the interconnection in between national climate policy and local climate plans from a multi-level governance perspective. And for the third part, it will be question and answer and discussion regarding possibility of collaboration. Very briefly, the University of Southern Denmark, it's located in the southern part of Denmark. It's a university having a little bit more than 50 years of history, bringing together different university and higher education institutions in the southern Danish region. Main campus is in Odense, that's the largest city in Denmark, and we have also other 4 campuses also in other parts of the southern region. We have around 27,000 students and nowadays around 4,000 employees. We are based in the Faculty of Engineering, Department of Technology and Innovation, and section of Civil and Architectural Engineering. The team is currently composed by 8 persons, with a large number of postdoc. We have it's a multicultural and multidisciplinary, as you can see, and the UNESCO Chair has been established 2.5 years ago, and although the group it's now 6 years old, and the UNESCO Chair was established on base of this group that I was having the mandate to create when I first joined the University of Southern Denmark. We work transdisciplinary. We focus on urban resilience in terms of transition. We are having an approach that's based on what we call evolutionary resilience approach, working a lot with other type of stakeholders, nationally and internationally, through also high-level engagement and participation. We have a strong focus on planning, spanning from physical to strategic planning in general. And we have also a cross-scale focus, spanning from national level to subnational level. The work, the understanding of resilience we are having, it's a systemic understanding that brings together climate change, disaster risk reduction, and urban development in the wider framework of sustainable development. In terms of climate change, we are looking both at mitigation and adaptation, because it's important to tackle jointly both causes and effects of major global challenges first, but not only climate change. For this reason, our reference is to main international agreements and framework like the Paris Agreement and the Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, New Urban Agenda, and the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development as main reference of our work. Again, 6 years ago, when the group was established and later the UNESCO Chair, we devised a very ambitious strategic plan that include different thematic and cross-thematic focus, spanning from the thematic point of view that are the central one, from water and resilient human settlement to resilience coastal and maritime planning, nature-based solution mostly related to climate, the interrelation between circular economy and built environment, human health and climate interlinkages in cities, urban climate finance, and data for disaster risk reduction. All these 7 thematic priorities are linked to 3 cross-cutting priorities that are namely climate governance, spatial planning for resilience, and capacity building. So all the thematic, our thematic focus are related to these 3 cross-thematic ones. We are really focusing in defining our research agenda in cooperation with key international stakeholders and in line with the international agendas, in order to be able to retrofit to our research and research result also the application, the operationalization of this knowledge, and to create impact national and subnational level, both in terms of policies and practice. And that's why also we are having a strong focus on capacity building. That's not only for researchers, but specifically also for policymakers and practitioners. Clearly, we are, as it is many different type of topics that are all integrated, but quite big in each one of them. It's rather big and complex. We have a different level of development of these knowledge areas. The most well established are the climate governance and the capacity building. We are constantly developing and continuously developing the water, the resilient coastal and maritime planning, the nature-based solution and spatial planning, and we are more at early stage for the human health and climate interlinkages, the climate finance, and the data for disaster risk reduction. Here I prepared just a very small selection of some of our key activities and projects. I would like to start with the International Urban Resilience Academy that we established 5 years ago in collaboration with 30 international organizations. You can see here a long list of partners from UN Habitat to UNDR, ICLEI, the African Development Bank, the Global Green Growth Institute, and also private organizations like ARUP and other academic institutions like Technical University of Delft or Politecnico of Torino. Through this academy, we are organizing every year a training for practitioners, researchers, and policymakers in Copenhagen. That's an intensive training. We have been, and this since 6 years, since 7 years, since 3 years, we've been also having a spin-off of this training for Asia and Pacific with the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center that we are running in Bangkok. And since 3 years, also we started a collaboration with NIDA, that's the National Agency for Cooperation for Development in Denmark, to organize similar training. And I'm also pleased to announce that soon we will run a joint training on urban resilience with the NIDA and the African Development Bank starting for this year. We are about to launch the call for application for the 2025 training in Copenhagen, and that will happen in July this year. And we will have a training organized in Bangkok for Asia and Pacific that's already been announced that will happen in April. And we are going to have in May and in October 2 other trainings with NIDA, the one in October also with the African Development Bank. All these trainings are based on a methodology called process design with a large focus on future scenarios and planning that is leading the participants also to develop strategic and action plans for pilot cities that we're using as key reference through the trainings. Another key initiative is an elite research center on aquatic nature-based solution that has been established in the University of Southern Denmark, bringing together colleagues and experts across 3 faculties: natural science, humanities, and engineering. Here we are we are looking at nature-based solution, bridging both coastal areas and ocean together with inland water. And this research center and activities, it's part of United Nations Decade on Ocean Science and Sustainable Development as one of the listed and recognized activities within the Ocean Decade. This is a truly transdisciplinary effort that is also trying to establish a novel, more systemic and more integrated approach to water and its understanding, and also focus on finding solution based on nature and ecosystem services. One other recently started initiative and project, it's a EU project under the Driving Urban Transition Program that's called Main Code, and is focusing on urban climate shelter in schoolyard. This project just kicked off in Torino, January this year, and will be around for the next 2.5 years. And we will look at emergency shelter in schoolyards with 2 pilots in Torino and in Athens. But there are also very much strong interlinkages with all the experience in the global south in establishing from more disaster than climate perspective emergency shelter in schoolyards, and also to look at other important topic, quite like the use of green corridors as a more urban scale and level type of sheltering, particularly against specific climate-related hazards like temperature rise, like heat waves, but also floods. The coupling both slow and rapid onsetting type of hazard, and based on principle like co-design and participatory planning, including also youth. One further project, it's related to the analysis of the urban content of national climate policies, like the National Determined Contribution, National Adaptation Plans, and long-term long emission development plans that are under the Paris Agreement. We actually personally started this work with UN Habitat in 2017. We've been publishing several reports on this. The latest one we will see later in the second part of this presentation. This work it's very important for country to be aware about how they are or they're not including cities in their national climate policies, particularly the NDC, that is cornerstone for the Paris Agreement implementation. Latest report has been co-published by SDU.Resilience with UN Habitat and UNDP. We've been also realizing a policy brief with the Global Green Growth Institute. We've been realizing deep dive for Africa, particularly from an urban finance point of view, with the African Development Bank, and we're about to publish one report with a specific focus on urban water, together with UNESCO and UN Habitat, that will be ready possibly by the 50 years anniversary of the International Intergovernmental Hydrological Program. In parallel to this analysis of the urban content of national climate policies, we also develop taxonomy and evaluation system and set of recommendation looking and analyzing local climate plans. We did this through a project in collaboration with the region of Southern Denmark and Aalborg University and the University of Roskilde. And also in this case, we've been looking both at climate mitigation, climate adaptation, hazards, and emission, greenhouse gases emission, and also the actions that are developed by the municipality in the southern Danish region to tackle these issues. We will also deep dive more in detail on this project in the second part, but it's worth mentioning that Denmark today is the first country having all its municipality with completed and fully developed climate plans. And regarding this project now, it has been announced just last week, we are part and co-coordinating as University of Southern Denmark, a very large EU LIFE project that will be based on the implementation of these plans in Denmark. The project will be, it's called Life Act, and will have a duration of 8 years with a budget of over 28 million euros, and a correlated project for over 200 million euros. I would like now to pass to the second part of this talk, looking more in detail about national climate policies, particularly the NDCs, and also local climate plans. This is our latest publication that's been presented at COP29 in Baku last year, where we had massive presence with over 13 side events and presentation organized in order again to maximize the impact and link research work with the policy making and practice. It is for this type of work we've been developing a taxonomy that comprise over 200 indicators. 100 of these indicators are based on the analysis of the NDCs itself. 194 NDCs were analyzed, looking at challenges and responses at the national and urban level for both mitigation and adaptation. And we've been looking also at analyzing key assets and also at cross-cutting issues spanning from gender to nature-based solution and others, and also having a first broad overview of means of implementation, namely finance, capacity building, and technology. These are the key results. The only 27% of the NDC analyzed are prioritizing cities in their NDCs. 39% are mentioning cities in the NDC, and 35% are not mentioning cities at all. As you can see, Europe, the entire EU, and the United States of America are not mentioning at all city. Here it's important a disclaimer. It doesn't mean that if cities are not mentioned in the NDCs, that nothing is happening in terms of climate change in the cities in the countries. But not to mention the cities in the NDC create two sets of problems. From one side, there is not a clear recognition of the importance of cities for the implementation and for achieving national set target for climate change. And from the other side, it's much more difficult for cities and subnational government to have access to financial resources, technology, and capacity in order to implement and contribute to the implementation of plans and actions at the local level without being mentioned in the NDCs. Ultimately, 73% of the NDCs should have a stronger urban content. Here we can see there is an overview of the key sector in terms of urban mitigation challenges and urban mitigation responses. The solid column are the challenges by sector, and the dashed column is responses. And as you can see here, and you will see it also for adaptation, at urban level, there is more focus on responses more than challenges, although this creates a problem because without having a clear understanding what are the challenges and having more focus on responses, we end up not having a coherent baseline that will allow the appropriate monitoring of the impact of the actions put in place. Without not too many surprise, the key sectors are energy, mobility, and waste. And we can see here, just in number of NDCs that are tackling these sectors, that there is very little in terms of built environment. That includes also construction sector. For adaptation, we have, as again, similar dividing between identification of challenges, identification of responses. The focus sectorially here, it's clearly on water and infrastructures. And we have very little, for example, on coastal areas, despite the fact that we know that this is a major issue globally, or on human health. That's also very well underestimated in our understanding. Here we have just a brief overview of means of implementation. As you can see, requests of finance at national level are very high in terms of number of NDCs, but at urban level, the identification of needs in terms of finance, technology, and capacity building, it's present in a very low number of NDCs. In terms of hazards, as you can see, there is also a very big divide in between national level and urban level. National level, there's a much higher number of NDCs containing an identification of key hazards. But at urban level, this is done in a very, very low number overall of NDCs. And again, without too much surprise, there is a strong focus on different types of floods. But all the other hazards are by far underestimated at urban level, for sure. We have also an overview, again, as a seen of cross-cutting issue. And here we have also the same divide in between national and urban level, as mentioned before. In this latest report is particularly important because through our methodology, we have been able to present not only aggregated data, but this aggregated data country by country. Here an example of a country that it's in cluster A, meaning prioritizing urban content, that's Colombia, and a country in cluster C with no mention at all of urban content, and with an outline, a snapshot of sectors, challenges and responses for mitigation and adaptation, national and urban level, and the same for hazards. I will not enter too much for the sake of time into the recommendation. The recommendation is really to integrate better national policies with local actions, and there is a number of specific recommendations how to do it, particularly now that the NDC 3.0 are currently under development, and probably we will be able to take a further stock take starting from COP30 in Belém. Moreover, we already are starting work to replicate this type of analysis to national adaptation plan and the long-term low emission development strategies, and particularly at the integration of the three policies under the Paris Agreement. As I mentioned before, this is related to other type of publication in cooperation with a number of other organizations. One that I haven't mentioned before is clearly the Global Covenant of Mayors as well. Now, these national climate policies are important, but are just a part of what is happening at global level. Second fundamental part is the local climate plans. We've been working with the region of Southern Denmark for a couple of years now. As I mentioned before, Denmark is the first country having all its municipalities having developed local climate plans. This is actually an initiative that is born from the bottom by an association of municipalities coming together with the regions that got funded by Real Dania, that's public foundation, similar to, I don't know, Bill Gates Foundation, for example, in USA, and that got support by a think tank in Denmark called Concito, and a global initiative as C40 cities that develop guidelines in order to have an harmonized development and supported development of these plans that started already in 2020. Our work here is to develop a taxonomy that will allow to analyze the state of the plan. And this taxonomy, it's important to state that it's harmonized with the taxonomy that we use to analyze national climate policies, in order that in the near future we will be able to bring this together and go to work country by country to analyze a broad spectrum of national climate policies and local climate plans and see also how vertically this integrated. The system working on challenges and actions is the same, and also with a stronger focus on the hazard, stronger focus on means of implementation. Here, just as a snapshot, we can see overall that for energy and transport, in terms of mitigation and reduction of greenhouse emission, it's where the effort is stronger, both toward 2030 and 2050. Clearly, 2050, it's a scenario where we have a reduction of 70% of emission, all in all at country level. And what it's striking, it's actually the fact that municipalities in Denmark that are not only urban but are having large agricultural, forest, and rural areas are having a lot of emission coming from agriculture and forestry and other land use. And this emission for the municipality are the ones that are hard to tackle. Here we have some highlight regarding the planned actions regarding mitigation. Here you can see the number of municipalities that are containing the different type of action, from extraction on lowland soil, afforestation, change in cultivation, power to X, etc. And we have been looking again also at adaptation. Here in this graph, you can see the numbers are referring to the number of municipalities addressing in their action this type of issues. For example, flooding from storm surge, flooding from high groundwater, flooding from river overflow, or from precipitation and coastal erosion. Almost all the municipalities have estimated the loss and damages, but again, here the estimation is not fully harmonized. There is an underestimation or less ability to understand vulnerability and exposure. And some specific, there is a very strong focus on floods, also because more data were available at the right scale and detail for the municipality to use regarding floods. But regarding other hazards, there is not the same level of data. And the type of action that the municipality can do can affect more hazards like floods, but hazards related, for example, to coastal erosion will need a more cross-municipal type of approach. And that's the reason, or the explanation we found to explain why only one municipality is working on coastal erosion specifically. So again, data, the lack of data and the lack of mandate to act, and also the lack of visibility on slow onsetting type of assets and risk. That's these are the main blockages that we've seen, or main barriers and issues that we've seen in these plans. Another fundamental issue is to understand and be able to calculate and also to give a geographical reference and positioning the land use for implementing the different type of action, not only for adaptation, but also for mitigation. Municipalities are listing a lot of action for both mitigation and adaptation, but they're not able to understand how much land they need and where this land it is, if it's occupied, and how to get the land they need in order to implement the plans. So here I stop here, and sorry to run a little bit over time, and sorry also to be extremely quick in this presentation, but I would like also to leave some appropriate time for us to be able to have a bit of discussion. And thank you very much for your attention. And if you allow me, before starting, I also would like to reiterate that I made the presentation, but as is cited in the PowerPoint, this is again the work of our entire group, and I'm happy to see that also some of my colleagues have been joining us now.
So, Nicola, I break the ice. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, just a observation, question. Regarding your approach that is about urban resilience like a complex system. So this is an important aspect that it's very, very important to have an overview with a lot of indicators that you study in order to understand how it's possible to put together the problem of cross-cutting issues in the management of the problem. No, at the local and also a regional level. From your experience, from your studies, how you have discover in the different part of the world in which we are study the problem, the different also culture in the different part of the world face this systemic issue in the different places, in the different cities. Because I think there is also a cultural aspect in terms of technical culture of to work in silos or work to get in cross-cutting approach and how very important information from the indexes are usable in order to give a sort of direction on which is possible to go ahead. You are mute.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you very much for a very important multifaceted question. Starting from the purpose of this work. This work is exactly informed policymakers and practitioners. We are taking as university, a public university, and as UNESCO Chair, we are not making just an internal type of assessment, but we are making an independent, science-based type of analysis. Methodology, transparency, etc. And it's fundamental in this undertaking for giving the solidity and, again, the transparency about the result and the recommendation that we can give. For that reason, for example, for us, it was very important that having seen many reports analyzing national climate policies, normally the request is always to aggregate data, not to upset any country. I was happy that we've been able to develop a methodology that allows us to be precise enough to single out each country and this municipality. Because they need to have this overview. They need to understand also what are the gaps that gaps in knowledge and all that. And after having established this baseline, in order to understand which are barriers, which are recommendations, and how to bridge it, we are engaging stakeholders. We've been engaging the municipality, we've been engaging other experts for the local climate plans, and we've been developing this work for the national climate policies with a cohort of over 30 experts representing 30 international organizations, academia, UN agencies, intergovernmental, country level, and all that. And again, this is linked to the fact that the linkage in between science, practice, and policy making. So also from a methodological approach, it's not just an index, quantitative type of work, but there's also a qualitative surveys, interviews, and it's participatory by its means. Now, regarding more the differences in, let's say, silos versus a more systemic approach, I will include in that both cultural, institutional issues altogether, and also financial issues that can explain a more silos approach versus a different one. So sectorial or silos are happening because we have division of work in between ministers that are having different mandate, different budgets. In cities and local level, these things are coming more together. But as I mentioned it for the question of coastal areas versus floods, they are coming together, but there is also limitation on the mandate they're having, what they can operate with, the space of the operational space that they're having. And there is a clear also, and that's on our academic side, an issue of still a lot of confusion regarding multi-trans and cross-disciplinarity and what it means. And just to be blunt, also this type of work that we are doing for the reason that we are making publication with the UN agency, we're working with the UN agency, it's not always easy internally to communicate this. And to put it within the more classical stream of fundamental science and research. That's also another issue. But getting again to your question, what we have seen that's very important is that some initiatives like the one in Denmark are starting from the city themselves, going beyond what they are mandated by the government, and also working against a government that now Denmark in the reform of the public health, they inserted 8 lines of text where basically they are telling regions that from today you cannot work any longer on climate change. Only the National Ministry of Climate and municipalities are. That's quite surprising. And from the other side, we see initiative at national level, like in Colombia, that by their own accord, they decided to build up the national climate policy, asking the regional government and that should involve municipality in a participatory process in order to understand challenges and which way the different level of governance can contribute to the national climate plans. At the same time, on the opposite, on the negative, we have country, let's say in the global north, where there is a higher level of evolution from national to local level that are overseeing and not thinking much about including cities, because the power has already been given to subnational level. So there is not any longer in European countries a Ministry of Planning. like there is in many countries in the Global South, for example. So this is just a scattered way to try to address your question. I hope that shares some light on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
America.
Thank you. My question is, well, first to thank you very much for your clear and very good presentation. I work in the DRR unit with Soichiro, and I see a lot of common things that we can do with your work and what we are doing. I just had a question a little bit related to the question of Stefano, more in your answer, because we know that to have sustainable solutions, we need to mainstream DRR and climate change. If we continue just working in silos between DRR and climate change, probably the solution will not be sustainable, no? And my question was more in the line that I see that you're talking about climate governance, climate policies. Is that because one of your challenge has been that you cannot work with both, or maybe not, I don't know, trying to give like a first approach to talk to the government that they should work together, something like that. It's more in that line, my question. Thank you.
So there is the reason of the language I used is because one of the starting point is policy under the Paris Agreement. So the language is adapted for the policy analysis to that type of language. That's the reason why we are speaking about capacity building versus capacity development. I will not open that Pandora box, but that's yeah, that's but the ultimate point for us, and that's why I open stating what is the mandate of our chair, is the understanding of resilience not as a synonym of disaster risk reduction or climate adaptation, but it's bringing together both causes and effect on major global challenges that are affecting cities. And this is founded on the issue of sustainability broadly, of development, of disaster, and of climate. Climate here as the strongest challenge that we are bringing to it. But there is a need to bring these agendas together, to integrate them. That it's not easy to be implemented. Again, because the sectorial division of space is very strong, because we're still arguing in between capacity development and capacity building, because there is agencies that are working in silos also. Because I will not name a specific UN agency, but they're having a division of resilience and division of climate. Since many years, I tried to convince them to work together, but it's not so easy to make it happen in real life. So because there is a specific, in that case, institutional mandate that the work is divided, the donors are different, they cannot compete against the same donor, etc. But there is a tension from the other side, for example, from the climate and Paris Agreement perspective. Since some years, it becomes apparent, something that we are repeating since decades, that if we are not tackling both causes and effect, both mitigation and adaptation together, we cannot go ahead. If we are having a plan for low emission that doesn't speak with the adaptation plan and the overall national climate contribution, we cannot go ahead. We don't have resources to do everything. We cannot replicate our work. We cannot work in silos because this creates negative rebound effects. So it's...
Thank you.
May I? Thank you. So I'm Dina D'Ayala. I'm the UNESCO Chair in Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience Engineering. So I come at this from a very, let's say, technical perspective. I was very interested. Sorry, I couldn't join from the beginning, but so I can only comment on what I've actually listened to and attended. But I was very interested in your data on municipalities attending to flood mitigations, different type of flooding, and how do they attend to flood mitigation. And I was curious to understand what are the policy at municipal level that you mentioned for direct mitigation, and whether these are, let's say, at an urban scale, or more specifically directives to, let's say, residents or particular type of, infrastructures or particular housing and so on.
Yeah. So a national level, sorry if I start there, but it's important.
Yes.
At national level, there is a clear objective for a reduction of emission at national level. There has been a second national adaptation plan climate adaptation plan has been launched very recently. This plan, though, doesn't put on the table financial resources, but is giving direction. So that's an important limitation. From the other side, we have the municipality that self-organize themselves, create an association of municipality, and decided that and achieved that since 2019-2020, all municipalities now are having local climate plans. These plans have been developed with the same type of methodology that has been supported by also C40 and Concito is a think tank in developing it. And there has been a tryout to harmonize the way in which we are defining baseline for hazards, baseline for emissions, and also in which way the action should be more or less shaped. The harmonization didn't work for every aspect, but there is a coordination that will be a further effort in the further development of this plan in order to have it more harmonized. For that reason, I was mentioning particularly the focus on floods and the reason for that focus. It's more evident, this plan, sorry, before entering that, this plan are municipal plans. And the municipality in Denmark, apart the major city, are having a strong, how you say, a very strong component of rural areas. So they are working on floods, particularly because it's more evident, they're having more data, and they can act more directly on it. They're not working on coastal areas so much, exactly, because they don't have mandate. The actions, though, are start to include also aspects that are new for Denmark, quite like droughts or heat waves. There is a orientation to go from single hazard to more cross hazard and compounded events type. And there is also the attempt to, or the intention to look more at exposure and vulnerability. This it's linked also to intention to involve also private sector and more citizenship in defining type of action solution.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just to give you a broader overview.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Please.
Sir, can I raise a question, please?
Please.
Thank you so much, sir. Let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Abdul Latif. I'm from Pakistan. I have recently completed my PhD in urban resilience. Now, I work as a CEO in the municipalities. I'm from Pakistan. As you have mentioned that stakeholder, including community and the government side, especially from the urban side, the municipalities. They work in silos. They don't cooperate with each other. Now, this is peculiar to the developing world. This is what I have been experiencing here. Now, I'm educated. I have got a PhD. I try to work with the communities. That's not the case majority of the cases, because the other officer, they normally work within their offices. They don't cooperate with the communities. When I try to interact with the communities and invite them, please come and let's work together for climate adaptation and urban resilience, the communities are not ready and they don't trust us. So whether this situation is only peculiar to the developing world where we are facing, or is the same everywhere in the universe, like everywhere in the developed world as well as in the developing countries. Thank you so much, sir.
So you say from Pakistan, correct? Yes. So that's the case. Well, a country that's very close to also our work, and there are two aspects to what the points you are raising. One that, first of all, at least in Pakistan, you have a very strong National Agency for Disaster Risk Reduction that it's doing an excellent job also for the organization structure, having regional and sub-national type of work, and having direct relation with university there, and using really in a systemic way the knowledge that can be created in the entire country and bringing it together. So that's very laudable. There is, I know that, particularly in Pakistan, this issue about to engage the community, it's very at the center of the preoccupation of also the national agency. Clearly allowed me to also to be blunt. There is a question, let's say, of politics and democracy, broadly speaking. That's fundamental to acknowledge, at the very least. And in this case, this is, I do believe, it's part of the trust that communities are having in central systems. From the other side, and that's second part, so this question of trust and question of how support, and when I speak of support, is bilateral, meaning how national level support local and vice versa, how local level contribute to national efforts. It's a question of resources, framework, also participatory and democratic type of engagement. But from the other side, there is something that is often oversighted. And this is the traditional knowledge and the traditional way in which local level, and speaking communities and not just local administration, have to work in order to day to tackle with different type of challenges. And there is a wealth of knowledge that is not systematized, is not fully recognized, that is there, that we need to better understand and to cherish and also to support in further developing. And again, there is no possible solution that can be put in place if it's not done together with the communities. We all know very well that, particularly in formal settlement, in areas that are deprived and underdeveloped, that are at risk of any type of disaster, still the people will not leave their livelihood because it's their home, irrespectively from the risk, perceived or real, that they are affected to. Because it's their home. And the objective shall be always to preserve that, and if we're getting into a territory not of adaptation or mitigation disaster, but into loss and damages, nothing can be done anymore, then there should be measures that are also brought together in order to involve the community and involving the community.
Thank you so much, sir.
If there's no other question, we'll pass the word to you, Petra.
Yeah, I was giving a few seconds more if there
Yes.
are other questions, but if not, I really thank you for this very insightful talk, and many thanks for your activities. I hope we can find ways to collaborate and to work together also with the other UNESCO chairs focused on the disaster risk reduction and resilience. And I thank to all the participants for the very interesting question and for the participation of to the today meeting. And I invite you all to follow the Resilience Catalyst page that was shared in the link for the upcoming meetings and the future activities. Many thanks for this talk, Professor Tolling, and congratulations also to your colleagues for this work you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you to all of you.
And short question before closing, Professor Tolling, if you can share the registration and the number of participants with us so that we can.
Yes.
Many thanks for your presentation. It was really great. Thank you so much.
Glad to hear. Certo, Petra.
Grazie mille.
Un piacere. Verrò a Gorizia, Nova Gorizia a fine mese.
Ah, bene.
Appena ho le date, magari ci possiamo mettere d'accordo. Adesso sto cercando di capire se riesco a essere un po' più mobile, ovvero sia mi piacerebbe venire a Udine, però non so se sia possibile, non so se riusciamo magari a incontrarci a metà strada.
Bene, beh, insomma, sì, tanto Gorizia e Udine sono 20 minuti, quindi insomma riusciremo, certo.
Sì.
Perfetto, grazie mille. Bene, allora aspetto una sua
Sì.
email. Bene.
No, possiamo darci tu, scusami.
Insomma.
Sì.
Grazie mille.
Grazie mille. Adesso vedo di salvare la lista dei partecipanti in modo tale che posso mandarti tutto.
Sì, di
via
solito
email.
appena si chiude la registrazione, si chiude tutto, poi noi tagliamo la testa e la coda e pubblichiamo sul nostro
Sì.
sito.
Perfetto.
Grazie
Grazie
ancora.
mille ancora.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.